Hey, it's Zimzilla back in once again, guys. How's it going? Hope you guys having a wonderful night. Goji Lion, Matt, how's it going? Godzilla not. Why so late though? So, literally, the only reason why I'm doing the stream so late is because I also have work. So, I got off at work at like 10:30. So then I'm speeding down the highway to get back here for the stream. So that's primarily why. And Zovek is here as usual. I'm depending on how I'm feeling after the 3 videos I'm doing, because I'm gonna leave it as mostly my thoughts and then save any people coming on for probably the roundtable on the 19th, which is this coming Monday, which is around the same time as it was last time. It's just usually try to do it like the second to last or the last Monday of every month. So that's kind of where I am with that. And how's it going, Alice? Good to see you as always. Good to see everyone who's in here. We got 6 people in here. Wow, that's like more than I usually have on my streams. But thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. It's nice to see you guys all here and just enjoying time together with you guys. It's great, great. I love it. That was a long wait. Yeah, I'm sorry. But yeah, so we're doing 3 videos. We are going to be doing primarily the Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire trailer. We'll be doing that. We'll also be doing Nerdstalgic's video on the problem with Godzilla, and then I think we'll end it off with Omni Viewer's video, which is called Godzilla versus Kong versus Escapism, the issue no one is talking about. And I was going to originally, the entire video was going to be an Omni video, but I don't think like it. I have no problem with Omniviewer. I like him a lot. I like his content. And when I was doing this, I think would have been. I think how I set up the title and stuff was more accurate because that I didn't want it to come off that specifically be attack Omniviewer and not or just make it a Nerdstalgic and Omniviewer centered streams and just do 2 different ones. I think generally women better, and it is better to talk about them both here because I think they tackle similar things. And if anyone's wondering why it sounds a little weird, it is because I do still have a cold at the moment, so I'm getting over that. How do you think people should react to the idea? Probably the idea of canon, but so canon is important, especially if you're making a multimedia franchise. But if we're talking about something that inherently does not have any canon, is meant to be super loose and malleable in terms of like there's never been any centralized canon, and like there's a lot of stuff that are directly just contradicted throughout different stories, then sure, you don't have to follow it as much. A good example of this is the SCP Foundation. A lot of the stories will contradict themselves, and there are plenty of like timelines or events that are definitely not able to all happen at the same time, and things like what SCP-001 is or certain end of the world scenarios cannot mesh with each other. So things like that, there's no reason to be like this is canon or this isn't canon. That goes without saying. But like if there's stuff like with the Monsterverse, which should have canon, had canon, and then things just break canon for no reason other than they wanted to tell a specific story, then it's a matter of just calling out the creators for making stupid decisions, because ultimately that's what it is. Hello, Blackaroni. There are great franchises that don't follow canon. It's called anthology. So, there are connected anthologies, and then there are anthologies because you can make an anthology and there's nothing that's connected. All anthologies are just a collection of stories. For example, Ultra Q, if we're just keeping it in the kaiju space, Ultra Q is an anthology series. So in that case, you don't have to worry about like something happening as like right after the other episode because they don't really tie into each other. So that's an example of a looser anthology. But like things like the Twilight Zone are also anthologies, but they are farther apart from each other because they don't always follow the same group of characters. So that's something if we want to talk about anthologies. Hello, y'all. Yoshmo. I've been meaning to ask you, are you a power scaler? I'm a power scaler, but I don't spend as much time doing all the calcs and stuff, unfortunately. I would like to. It's just it would take up so much of my time that I unfortunately cannot do that. because GxK has truly become a pure representation of the Showa era. Yeah, it's kind of like the Showa era, but then like it's just I don't I would probably have to do a video on this, or Black or someone else is gonna have to do a video on this. I think that the Showa era is cool. I like the Showa era, but trying to emulate the Showa era by making the excuse that we're just doing random like wacky stuff, and because the Showa era did it, we can do it, is not good. Because like as much as the later Heisei stuff did not keep to like Biollante in '84, it didn't go as over the top as like Showa did, and it was still pretty good, even though it was more lighthearted in some aspects. And the Millennium era just did not really have a whole continuity where it was like it went from serious to silly, except for like Final Wars, but Final Wars isn't connected to anything else, so there is that. But brass tacks thing real quick. I also have to shill too. I love shilling. So I actually partnered up with this energy drink company called Havoc. They just released a new flavor. So if you guys are interested and you want an energy drink that it's similar to like Gamer Fuel and stuff, except they use a lot less chemicals in their drinks. And having the fact that I did get a sample, I will say this, having done Gamer Fuel, a few others I forget the names of, and this, it doesn't have as much of a powdery aftertaste as some other energy drinks that you're going to try. So if you want something that's energy drink focused, I recommend you try Havoc. I also have both a referral link and a discount code. So in that case, I am going to do both, and I'll put them in the chat for you. So for people who are interested, of course, you don't have to do it. You don't have to support the channel in that aspect. But if you like energy drinks and you want to support me, you can. So right there in the chat, or in the chat right there, that's my referral link, Zim Havoc. And if you want any discounts, like a coupon code, it's 10% off of anything in the store. If you do an order, it is going to be Kaiju 2000. And I'll put that in the chat as well. So use the referral link because that helps me a lot. And then using my code as well also helps with it. So anything that I do, whether it's signing up for the Patreon or using the referral link here, just helps in terms of getting things back up in terms of helping things with the channel. I'm going to be working on something that's going to be really big. That's going to take up a whole lot of my time, but then I'm also getting funds and stuff to help with it. Excuse me. It's primarily programming based. So I'm going to be actually getting a whole new big PC, and a lot of it's going to have a lot more processing power, specifically so that one, I can stream a lot of games like Gigabash and Dawn of the Monsters on the channel instead of trying to stream from a console to the stream and not have as much access to the stream itself. That's one of the big issues I've ran into, it seems, when I've done streams for games. And then just the fact that my PC is like, it's not as old as I am, but in computer years, it is pretty old. So there is that. Retro Blasting made a video about Canon titled Canon is Overrated. It's actually insightful. I'll have to take a look at it. But I'm not familiar with the guy's channel. I see the monsters diving into the Showa era vibe as being more open with the fantasy and sincere with the not exactly being goofy for goof's sake. So when you say fantasy, like there's a lot, like fantasy has a wide range of stuff, because you could have a Showa, well, not even Showa, you can have a kaiju series dip into fantasy and not necessarily be like a lighthearted fantasy. I think when people use the term dipping into fantasy, it comes with the connotations of it being more whimsical or just like more upbeat and kind of like balls to the walls. Oh, wow, this is so epic. Instead of fantasy can be kind of dark. Like, I think that a lot of people can cite things like Mothra or King Ghidorah being the fact that they're aliens or mystic animal creatures as dipping into fantasy. But I think that when we use that language, it denotes a lot and a lot more than people realize. I don't want to make a video on monsters because GxK, I feel like questions have been more enough insight on the subject. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Just what do you think about Shimu? That's as we have seen. In that case, yeah, let's just get into the videos again. There is the referral link to Havoc and Couch 2000 for 10% off any orders that you want to do in the future. Again, I highly recommend it. So I just realized another thing is that since I am going to be doing the entire trailer, I'm probably going to have to stop just a lot more. Unfortunately, this is just due to the fact that I don't want to get the stream taken down. So if you're wondering why I'm stopping as much, I apologize. Oh, there's your streamception, and I'll look at. I know, Vic. I'll look at your comment in just a second. So, we'll do it right there. I think that should be fine for you guys. Just unfortunately adjust the audio for yourselves accordingly. Look at them camels, guys. Look at them camels. Those camels should be dead already. And then, so this is what I assume in this case is I wish I had saved what the leaks were. I still remember most of them off the top of my head. More than likely, this is just a portal from the Hollow Earth opening up, and they made a new one from the inside of the Hollow Earth to open up. So,
for centuries, there was harmony.
And then obviously these are two different cuts here because we have Evolved Godzilla, and then that was the supercharged version.
The Titans were the guardians of nature, and the great apes became the protectors of humanity.
So, what I think is weird is the idea of the Titans and the great apes being different, because I know I was talking to a friend about this, where we have, at this point now, either 2 or 3 different species of ape kaiju. Kong, the new apes that look like Kong. If they are, they could just be actual just Kongs, and then Scar King, which is a whole different species. If the implications of this trailer's line is what I think it is, and that like the great apes as a Titan species or great apes as Titan groups were specifically the protectors of humanity, that's just a whole nother bit of complexity added to the Titan god mythology thing that I don't think needed to be done. And it just doesn't make sense, because we went from the Iwi discovering the Kongs on Skull Island and then being wiped out, to then the Iwis were from like the Hollow Earth. They had wars with the Godzillas, and then they went up to the surface. But then when they went up to the surface, somehow they ran into the Kongs, or they already knew what the Kongs were and they just ran into these Kongs that were on Skull Island, or that like Skull Island had opened up there. I'd have to refresh on the MonsterVerse lore, but a lot of it is stitching together what was already there and then adding new stuff onto it. I don't like the idea of the Kongs now being specifically unique Titans that are protectors of humanity. It's weird, but I guess you could roll with it. The thing that's on my mind, I guess, is that you could do certain gods having, or not god, well, yes, gods. You can have certain Titans fulfilling specific roles, but like when the MonsterVerse was originally introduced and we got the idea that the Titans were the gods from like original pantheons and mythologies, that could have worked in a sense where the Kongs, like every single member of Kong species that interacted with humans, were the stand-ins for certain gods. That's why you saw certain archetypes of deities represented across the world, because they were always represented by either Kongs or certain species of Titan. That idea works, and we do see that with certain Titans fitting into the mythologies or cryptids across the world. But I think they've just dropped that idea of the Titans being the first gods and just sort of sunk into their own mythology in a sense, which I guess cool, but I think that what they had originally done with the Kongs being just a species of Titan worked a lot better. And then we got Jade back. It's really cool. I like her as a character. And it's really cool that how well she's able to convey things without speaking. Really awesome. And Bernie, I could live without him. I think out of everyone in the movie in GvK, I could have gone without him, but sure. And then obviously we've got her Jira either getting dreams or visions of Shimu waking up, or Shimu, however you say it. And considering we'll see a shot with her that we'll touch on, but I guess this is like just humans dipping into the more mystical aspects of the MonsterVerse and just kind of letting her be the benchmark for all that. But And yep, there's the shot there. I will slow that down for all of you guys. I'm also gonna just turn off the volume because that's gonna sound really weird to all of you people. Okay, so yeah, it's this. Yeah, then that's probably later on in the movie. Either helping with another Titan we'll see here, or something else that's related to the plot. Yep. To all of you who are concerned about like spoilers and stuff, or didn't want to be spoiled, like these are being shown in the trailer. There isn't much else I can do, and I want to comment on it. Obviously, we knew she was gonna be in the trailer if you saw the leaks. If not, based on the compound eyes and that face area there, I guess you can see who that is without me directly and overtly saying it. I would check the comments. I'm looking at them from another screen right here, so there's that. And then we got Godzilla getting a nuclear pulse, and then monkey flip. Here's the Shuko flip, and then final battle. And literally, they look so out of place with how their effects bounce off the rest of the city here. It's really weird, but it is what it is, folks. Yep, and we saw the eyes of the other monster, which we'll talk about again. That's probably the like just start of the movie.
We've discovered a signal. She can feel it. Kong, Godzilla, they can feel it too.
I know a lot of people really like this idea of seeing Godzilla amped up like this, but it does not do wonders for the effects. I will say that.
Something is coming. Something even they're afraid of. You feel like going for a ride?
And we have no clue who he is. Obviously, we're going from Aaron Taylor Johnson to Mark Russell, and kind of without Mark Russell to Nathan, and now to this guy. The Monsterverse cannot do a leading man, and I'm more than likely, depending on how well this film does, we'll get rid of Eileen, unless that actress is not doing really anything else, and she'll be able to stick around, because probably Gia will stick around if Eileen sticks around. But at this point, what's it called? Madison and Mark are, and well, actually, no, Madison, Mark, Vivian, and Sarazawa are the four characters who have been in the most Monsterverse films, because they've all been in two respectively, either 2014 in Cottom or Cottom in GvK.
Never asked. Try not to swallow your tongue. What?
And we got the new Heaves, which they look really stupid. I wasn't even a huge fan of the original Heave designs, but wow, they just look like discount ornithopters from Dune. But like in the case of the ornithopters, there was precedent for them looking kind of the way they did because they came from the books. This, like, it just looks weird. It just looks like weird sci-fi tech, and not even sci-fi tech that I like aesthetically. I know some people will kind of like it. It doesn't really do anything for me. But that is what it is. And then we also realize that like Monarch and or whatever group is teaming up with Monarch to help fund all this, because it's clearly not the government, but lore stuff, really stupid. Yeah. But we can create portals to the Hollow Earth now by harnessing Hollow Earth energy, probably, or something like that. And then we got Pilot Man, who clearly is like, oh yeah, oh wonderful. One comment I will respond to: these keys look like the vultures from the anime trilogy. So at least with the vultures, they were surrounded by tech that was similar and like was in the future. This is literally like contemporary cities and then like really just out there tech. And this tech is not affecting human life at all, it seems.
Oh my God!
Yep, there's a portal. And it's really funny that now they're able to make these portals, but they don't end up in like Axis Mundi or something. But where did all the Monarch tech from 2019 go? So yeah, we've gone from like modern military stuff to the Argo, which we're never see. I know we're ever seeing the Argo again, which is kind of like plausible, quote unquote plausible looking. To the Heaves, now to we can literally just make portal tech, and then magnet trainways from the U.S. to China. And okay, cool. But yeah, at least we're seeing more parts of the Hollow Earth, which is kind of okay, I guess. Notice what he's are for in order to avoid the effects of Axis money. So we actually know they aren't to avoid Axis money, because all the Heaves do is just allow you to absorb the gravity shift. It wasn't the gravity shift that pushed them out. It was just that there were certain portals that spit you out into Axis Mundi, which Axis Mundi is just so stupid as a concept. I understand it's like a mythological concept, and the monsterverse is mythology, meaning reality, blah blah blah. It doesn't mean every single mythological idea should have an equivalent in the monsterverse. And we got some mini Kang. The mini Kang. We were Kongs and stuff.
Is that a mini Kong?
Yes, it is. And then probably that's the egg of we know who or something like that, probably.
Oh my god.
And then there's the hand.
Not just a signal. That's a call for war.
So, that's what I'm just gonna keep on pausing this. Either that's a young. I'm assuming these are Kongs. I doubt that these are another species of ape, because we'll have 3 at this point. Because we have obviously this guy, and if you look at them, they just look like gorillas. Like they look like Kong does. So I assume they're just other Kongs. Yes, we was Kongs and shit. And then big man. And we got these 3 goons right here. And we got the Loudman, the big old bald person, the big old bald monster that someone on Twitter said was a allegory for Trump. I kid you not. And then everyone was complaining about this fight, because. One sec, wait. Yeah, I'm just gonna. So everyone's complaining about this, that for some reason, like, bro, why is he so weak? Kong can beat him in a fight. It's like, I'm not let me pass. Yeah, I'm not surprised that Kong would probably be able to win this fight between these two. But clearly Scar King, like the whole big thing is intelligence and stuff like that. So that's why he's able to use his kunai chain and probably win. Or more than likely he may lose, and this is what we see is Kong ending up either Scar King losing to Kong and then Scar King using the new monster. And this is relevant because I think we'll see what happens here, because we see something else happen in the trailer, which I assume is probably a get back. And of course there's the ice breath, which is what we're told.
On his own.
He won't be alone.
That will still, this design will never look good to me, and the scale is still messed up. And obviously we see him there, and then we see the other Goodman right there.
The last time those 2 met up, it was almost the end of Kong.
They don't have to like each other.
They don't have to like
Just
each
have to
other.
work together.
Yeah, it's they just have to work together. They mean like a Mechagodzilla, and we're gonna have to retread this fight again, because probably there was no other reason. They needed some way to fill up time. I know for a fact that if Kong gets any kind of good licks, and it can be interpreted as Kong winning, there's so many people can be like, "Oh, Kong got his run back and won and beat Godzilla. He's the king of the monsters now." Which I think that the whole idea of those two having a quick spat between each other is stupid, but whatever. And there it is. There it is. He said, "Drop the child."
Like each other. We just have to work together.
Boom. And yep, that's the thing I'm talking about. He lost.
We just have to
Kong,
work
obviously, he's
together.
clearly lost his tooth, and I think we're gonna see like this is more, that scene right there is hyped up more for the oh wow, he got his run back and knocked out Scar King's tooth, and I think we'll have a similar scene happen between those two, but it's gonna be like, oh wow, he's so strong, he knocked out Kong's tooth, but
Now I have seen everything.
and then there I don't really know what the context of this since it's been so long since the
Now
trailers.
I have seen everything.
Where this is taking place. Either Godzilla's just, I think there was a leak that Godzilla was gathering more power, so that's ultimately what happens. And I remember there was some fucking weirdo on Twitter being like, "Oh yes, it's good. Godzilla's not being portrayed as the hero. He needs to kill everyone to prove a point." It just hides and somewhat mask off on a few other things, but neither here nor there. And we get the Palpatine shot. It's the Palpatine. It's the good old Palpatine shot. I hope that this kind of see them charge up and then all the energy knocks the wings out, just goes away. I understand Godzilla has the nuclear pulse, but it literally, this is more reminiscent of the whole like I am all the Sith lightning thing that Palpatine did, and it feels like everyone's trying to replicate that because normies thought it was cool. And is it similar to the nuclear pulse from Cottam? Sure, but like that was done for a specific purpose. We'll see what happens in the film. I doubt there's going to be any good reason for it though. And of course, we got the Iwis. Got the Iwis back. Yep, and that's probably, we know who. Monkey Throw. Good old Monkey
Made
Throw.
some minor augmentations.
Oh,
And then there's the Beast Glove. Trademarked. Oh, and then this scene right here. Yeah, that looks really weird, specifically in this shot here. I think some people were comparing it to Pacific Rim Uprising. I'm inclined to agree. And it's like, yep, there's his replacement tooth right there, and then the Hollow Earth upgrade glove. And then we got what appears to be a different version of the evolved form because he doesn't look as spiky. The arm blades look smaller, but Wingard said that there were going to be different designs throughout the film. I assume he probably just means the fully blue form, regular Doagoji, and then the evolved form here. Which I guess, sure, those are 3 different forms, but I doubt the evolved form is going to look too different. It may just be because of the shot. But even then, this gap here looks super weird. At least the chest doesn't look as like puffed out, but I think it's honestly just the shot. I still don't like the design. Godzilla X Kong, the new empire. I know I talked to Vic about this on Twitter. I don't like the faux like super epic orchestral stuff here. Like, right, if you listen. It just seems like I get the fact that like, we're trying to make it seem like this epic final battle for the ages. If you stand alone, you fall alone. We must stand together, apes together strong, blah blah blah. But like, if everyone's saying that this is like goofy, we'll have fun, just show a goodness, then just sort of lay into it. Like, I've seen Omaha, another YouTuber on here who's done a lot of Monstrous Moments. He's done a few he did a video where he put Super Beast in front of some clips for the new trailer, and it felt so much more in line. And then excuse me, someone else on Twitter did a version of this with You're All to Blame on over this trailer here, and it felt more in line because like the whole like thing that I've heard from people is that the thing isn't taking itself seriously, it's just having a fun sort of moment for itself. That's what you want. Fun monster movie goodness, that's what we want to do. Sure, cool, I guess, but I think if that is the case, then just kind of just lay into it. Have some good rock music. I remember when "Here You Go" was used for GvK. I'm not a big rap person or pop person, but it fit the aesthetics of that movie far more than what we actually got with the trailer there. But I'm gonna respond to a few comments real quick. Let's go all the way to the top. I love that. So somewhere over the rainbow. Yep, there it is. So what do you think about Shin just from the glances we've seen? I really have no opinion. I think that like Godzilla in this movie, they are going to be a giant plot device, and Godzilla will be the plot device to fight the plot device. And I think when we're talking about fantasy, I mean, fantasy and concepts also delves into sci-fi. It's like Star Wars. Star Wars, like, has an aesthetic to it and has, like, an identity in a way that it tries to take itself seriously, but not like, oh, wow, look at how goofy and silly this is. New Star Wars does that a lot. So that is something to consider. For the SCP Foundation, just start with like the classics. Like, just look at SCP videos and then just sort of read down the list, see SCPs you like, and just start reading from there. If the monsterverse wants to go down a more fantasy-like path, they should take an approach similar to Monster Hunter. Here's the thing. Monster Hunter had a consistent world and like has had consistent directors and creatives behind it as the driving force. And because of how much more consistent Monster Hunter is, plus it's its own world, so it can essentially tell its own story and do everything it wants to because it has complete control over its setting. It can do a lot more than the Monsterverse can. First trailer did not excite me. This one did way better at creating hype. I don't know. I'm happy that some people like it. I'm just apathetic. And I just, Black said, don't before you get into this. I'm so sorry. Before you get into this, I want people to keep this in mind. When people say Godzilla movies are silly, same way superheroes are, and people don't complain about silliness of those movies, they're calling all the fiction silly by virtue of being not reality. Judging a movie based on the plausibility of premise is not useful for anyone at all, and that's why we judge by execution, and that's how we judge the monsters and knowledge that they're poorly made. That is correct. That's why if you hear someone say it's a movie about space wizards intended for children, or it's a movie about spandex people fighting, or it's a giant lizard spawned from the bomb, then you can dismiss them out of hand because clearly they're arguing in bad faith, or they just cannot argue actually, because it is always going to be about execution. And then also there's just certain people where if the premise is not like a one-to-one of reality, any aspects of it are not totally grounded or real, then there's no reason to argue with them because nothing will be able to change their mind on that. A good aspect of it, or a good way to judge this, is like with horror, there's some people who do not like supernatural horror at all, regardless of how good it is. They just cannot buy into the idea of ghosts, demons, monsters, etc. And regardless of how good the scares are, how good the tension is, the writing, etc., they will never get into it, and they'll just think it's bad because it's not real. But they may love serial killer fiction, regardless of it being a true story or not, because a killer is something that's real while a demon or a ghost isn't to them. And it's a much easier barometer or like idea to get your head around versus like arguing whether a fantasy idea is silly or not, versus like other like the execution of other things. Whoop, wrong thing. I think it's good setup because I has what Godzilla has been because this is how he's not a direct protector of Godzilla. Kong and his species are humanity's protectors. Like Bernie's character. How's it going, Evolved Godzilla? Yep, there it is. The Mothra is back. Nerd, how's it going, my buddy? For anyone wondering, yes. I was like wondering who's like saying nerd to me, and I'm like, oh no, it's an IRL friend. He's doing streams. Vegas nerd. No. I was wondering who that was. Oh my goodness. No, don't worry. Schmo. He's an IRL friend, so he's punking me because he knows me. I've known him for like a couple of years. It's good to see you actually coming into a stream. Nice to see you. He's playing my answer. His friend is going to be called Hunter. He's basically Kong's dentist. Oh, so yeah, he's probably the one who gives him the brace and the tooth. So there's that. And yeah, Black's essentially the same thing I was saying. It's the many forms of Godzilla. He's wrong. Something you see in Halo? Not really. I guess like maybe it looks kind of Forerunner-y. But here's the thing though. If it reminds you of something that the Forerunners built in Halo, then that's bad because this is supposed to be like regular human tech. Human tech in Halo looks far more plausible and in line with like what you would expect from the Monsterverse than the Heaves, which look like something the Forerunners built. It's a good example you brought up because at least I can address it directly. Well, we don't know what happened to the Argo. It's gone. Reduced to atoms. Yeah, those are my thoughts exactly. It was, anything else that looks kind of worthwhile with size gone. Yeah. I also agree with that too. My opinion. I want to see about. Why are people okay with Godzilla? Are not okay? I think you mean not okay. Why are people not okay with Godzilla coming fast and having no weight? But when Pacific Rim Uprising does it with the catching ears do it, everyone gets mad. Oh no, you were saying when people do it and when people do an Uprising and like it. I think it's just because it's Godzilla, so people will excuse more. In certain cases, I think that in the case of the Jaegers, it could make sense that the Jaegers can move faster because they are more advanced mechs. The kaiju moving faster, I think there's things you could do besides making the monsters faster and ruin the tension. But like, there's a point to where when something is moving so fast and so big that it's going to look uncanny to a certain extent. So that's my stance on it. GvK shows up being epic, real cool. The tries to make the movie seem like it's more grandiose than what it's going to be. Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel. She looks so big. I'd estimate typing around for it, like maybe. Yeah, I mean, like we'll see. We'll find out. I don't think it's really gonna matter too much. What are your thoughts on Shima being a female? If you're saying female can't be cool, like male monster. No, I don't think a lot of people would say that. I know a lot of people are like Shima is female, and then when they're like, no, there's no evidence for it, and there was a lot of toys saying that it was male, and then people saying it was male. Those same people got mad, but when finally, apparently it was either changed mid production to be female monster, a bunch of people were like, oh my gosh, we told you guys, or wow, it's a win. It's like, no, you bitched enough on Twitter, and apparently that was enough for them to be like, oh, we'll just make it female, why not? But people like that are clowns and should never be taken seriously. Are they lighter? Again, when's the last time I even watched Uprising or looked at its stats? But either way, like there was a reason as to why they moved faster. Plus, it makes more sense for mechs to move faster because of many factors. What's your favorite original Titan for the Monsterverse? Camazotz. Oh, that's what you meant. Okay, never mind. And we are caught up. Okay. Let me switch back over again. So we will move into the next video, which is Nerdstalgic's The Problem with Godzilla. At least probably I'm going to say with this one. And I know someone just said it. Yeah, Primordial just said it. Shimo reminds me of a hybrid of Anguirus and Titanicus. Titanicus looks cooler than Shimo. I'm sorry. Like, Titanicus has the idea of an ice monster, and it looks like it fits more in the Monsterverse than like Shimo. Shimo looks just kind of bland to me. I said this on Gojin's stream. I was on that. Oh my gosh, the day's been melding together. It's either this week or it was the week before. I was on his stream. I'll probably do a pinned comment on like that stream for y'all to look at that because that has more thoughts. Excuse me, on the designs. Nerdstalgic is a massive. You are correct, sir. Same issue here too. Though doing a lot of Godzilla clips, and I want the stream getting taken out. So a lot of pausing. That's compressed.
This is Godzilla.
Yes.
So is this.
Yes. Although that's really weird that they used a different roar for minus.
And this.
No, it's not. I know you're in the chat, Vic. No.
These separate and disparate versions of the iconic kaiju have all been responsible for literal billions of dollars generated at the box office.
Yes.
But only certain iterations of everyone's beloved King of the Monsters have stood the test of time. So what separates the good Godzillas from the bad?
Sure.
Well, the answer is both more
Simple and complex.
simple and more complex than you think.
Godzilla?
彼が英語で名付けていた。
Godzilla.
Before we get too deep into today's
I guess the whole I hate the fact that like whenever people who weren't G fans do these videos, they do like the Gojira Godzilla thing. It is so stupid. Please stop doing it. It is really fucking stupid and it needs to stop.
Battle of the Kaiju, please be sure to subscribe to
No.
Nerdstalgic for more videos just like this. In 2014, Gareth Edwards directed a film simply titled Godzilla. It was for many Americans.
I just realized I respect this video a lot more for not doing the, well, there's Godzilla 1954, then there was the 1998 Godzilla, then there was the 1984 Godzilla. How many, and like do a joke about a bunch of movies called Godzilla. Thank God they did not do that.
A reintroduction to one of the most globally beloved characters cinema has ever spawned. It had visual flair and directorial panache, but most importantly to the not so familiar with Godzilla American audiences, it was a grounded take on the genre of gigantic monsters destroying a city.
This is not going to be some silly, cheesy Hollywood movie. It's going to be like an emotional, epic, cinematic blockbuster.
While the film pulled in $529 million, that was not the end goal for this incarnation of Godzilla. The production company behind the project, Legendary Entertainment, was planning something much more grandiose, an interconnected universe of films.
Well, I mean, at the time, they didn't realize they weren't trying to do the whole thing with Kong at that point because it was just by essentially luck that the idea for a new King Kong movie was coming around the same time the 2014 had been made, and that's what allowed them to before the idea of doing GvK came to play. Plus, it was essentially after the movie had done so well, they were like, oh, well, we can keep going. Well, we'll do Rodan, we'll do Mothra, we'll do King Ghidorah. So, like, they didn't have the idea until the movie had made money.
There's more out there.
What do you mean, more? This world never belonged to us. It belonged to them. The question is how long before they take it back.
In quick succession, Legendary released Kong, Skull Island, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and Godzilla vs. Kong. And yet...
That's... my goodness. There's still a lot of time between all of those movies. Because GvK... Well, I'm trying to remember when Kong Skull Island came out. Because Kong Skull Island was out in 2017, so that was 3 years. That's 3 years between Kong and Godzilla. So there was that. And then King of the Monsters was 2019, so that's just a 2-year difference. And then 2021, or was it 2020? No, it was 2021 for GvK. So yeah, it's essentially, it was a 3-year gap between the Godzilla and the Kong movie and then a 2-year gap between the others. So like it wasn't as in quick succession as compared to like Man of Steel or any of the Marvel movies either.
While these films inarguably have pulled in literal dump trucks of money, something seems to be missing about them. Culturally, they're not thought of as a cinematic universe in the way that Marvel and DC are. The films are often thought of as less of a universe and more as a series of films that everyone is collectively shocked is still going.
I guess sure, but like there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, no, it's still a cinematic universe. You really like need to support that claim that people don't see it as a cinematic universe. There's a lot of people who see it as a quote unquote cinematic universe. And yeah, I wouldn't say dump trucks. Like the movies are making money, but they're not making a lot. They're not making a lot of money as compared to like other cinematic universe movies. But it's also because of how niche kaiju is as a genre.
Feel like they occupy a similar spot to the original Transformers films. Everyone knows they're dumb, but they can't help themselves. They just want to see the explosions and monster fights.
Maybe it's because like the Transformers movies weren't a cinematic universe. They were just it was just a movie series. Because I think like when people think of a cinematic universe, they think like movies that are interconnected with each other, but then don't necessarily focus on like the same group of characters all the time. Because at least if we're going by the Marvel formula, we had Iron Man and Hulk, which outside of in the Hulk's case, Robert Downey Jr. at the end and Samuel L. Jackson talked about the Avengers and Captain America. The interconnectedness wasn't as there. It was just the idea that all these movies were happening like in the same universe, and then there was the Avengers where it connected them all together. Whereas with the Transformers movies, you had the first movie, which has the Revenge of the Fallen and followed up the events of that movie, and it was just sort of a sequence of events rather than a more connect the dots way of understanding the story of this world. Plus, like the world building in the Monsterverse has been so destroyed that like the idea of it being a cinematic universe has kind of lost its appeal.
To put it simply, they're disposable. They're not what the first half of the emotionally raw Godzilla 2014.
And I
Fairlife
fucking
has
ads. Fairlife. 50% less sugar, guys. Drink your milks. You have another ad there. God, I love this. People just like to watch monster movies. What do you think the psychological reason for this is? I just have a base level understanding of it. I was wondering what your thoughts would be. I will actually answer that later. Because that's an interesting point I would like to make. And up there, oops.
So why haven't these what the first half of the emotionally raw Godzilla 2014 promised? So why haven't these films truly taken off? What is the issue at the core of the Monsterverse that's holding it back?
We are the cause. We are the infection.
And here's where the problem with the Monsterverse Godzilla movies kind of begin and end. They're really not trying to be anything more than monster movies. And they want to be taken seriously, like...
So what do you mean that they just want to be monster movies? Because, like, even if you're looking at American monster movies, like 10 Million Miles to Earth, Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, although they're not American, the Gorgo, Giant Behemoth is, the Deadly Mantis Tarantula, those movies are far different from, like, these movies. These are far more, these aren't really, like, serialized or, like, one-and-done kind of movies. They do have, like, their own plots, good or bad as they may be, but they aren't trying to be just like creature features in the same sense as like classic American monster movies. And although many people will disagree that the other Godzilla movies don't really have themes, some of them definitely do. And just how those are structured are definitely different from how the Monsterverse movies are. So like so much of this is so generic or vapid that it means like what he's saying means nothing.
They are more than monster movies. In one breath, they'll have something exceedingly goofy happen like in Godzilla vs. Kong when we literally go to the center of the Earth, where we learn that the Hollow Earth theory is true.
Okay. I would, in this case, I would like the same person who wrote the script to then tell me how I shouldn't take the idea of dwarves or elves in Middle Earth and like seriously, because you're talking about humans, then tiny humans, and then hobbits too, tiny humans with leather feet and pointy-eared humans. Because the idea of a race of literal like midgets sounds silly if we break it down to, oh, look at this idea that is truly silly. It like Black said, it's completely about execution. And if we're going to say, whoa, wow, it's just goofy ideas, then ultimately any idea can be goofy if you want to be pedantic about it.
And monsters live there, and then in the next breath, we'll be in the middle of a grounded family drama.
Wait, that's two different movies, you fucking loser! Like, oh my goodness.
when we literally go to the
Wait,
center
oh no,
of the
I just
something exceedingly goofy happened like in Godzilla vs. Kong when we literally go to the center of the earth where we learn that the hollow earth theory is true and monsters live there, and then in the next breath we'll be in the middle of a grounded family drama.
I don't even think he says after this in Godzilla King of the Monsters. No, those are two different movies.
You're as good at finding her as you are losing her.
I didn't lose her. She ran away.
Oh, gee, I wonder why.
If I had these two for Paris, I'd run away from home too.
In Monarch,
and this is a totally different part of the MonsterVerse. Like, we can't talk about tone shifts and say, well, in this series right here versus this movie, yeah, they're two different movies.
TV show set in the MonsterVerse universe, we follow a young woman who travels to Japan to discover that her father secretly has been having an affair for 2 decades, and also get to see some flashbacks of Godzilla destroying the Golden Gate Bridge. It shouldn't take a Monarch scientist to tell you these tones don't exactly feel like they're talking to each other.
Wait, so I think if I remember correctly, he does praise -1, and like, the whole thing about -1 is someone getting over PTSD while a giant monster attacks like his country. So if he's gonna say like tones don't match, it has nothing to do with tone, fucking troglodyte. It has everything to do with the fact that how everything is set up or how things are executed is just not up to snuff.
Legendary's MonsterVerse projects aren't without redeeming qualities. There's good moments, characters, or sequences.
Oh, this is divisive too.
Without redeeming qualities.
Okay, so first off, she was not a redeeming quality. That's a good. I like the shot.
There's good moments, characters.
The fact that he said that she's a good character is gonna make so many people angry, but there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna be like, "Yes, that's true." I'm on the fence with that always. I need to watch King of the Monsters again. But that's divisive, and I love it.
Or sequences in all of the films, but the thing that's most frustrating about these movies as a unit is that they're just not aspiring to the same level of gravitas. Whereas
I'm sure. Okay. But let's see where you go with this.
Across the street, the Toho Godzilla movies have been, no pun intended, on fire lately.
That's stupid. Japanese speech. Why did you put Japanese speech there when there's subtitles here? I like closed captioning just so if I catch something I can read it, but that's so distracting.
In 2016, you had Shin Godzilla, a political satire that deconstructs the Japanese government's inability to respond to a crisis and save lives. The film is smart and genuinely scary. Even Shin Godzilla's design harkens back to the idea that Godzilla would be visually referential to the atomic bomb's mushroom cloud.
As much as that is true, Shin has very little to do with the bombs from back in the day. The nuclear disaster that it is referencing is definitely different. So, but like, I know a lot of people like Shin's design. So this isn't a thing about how Shin looks or how it doesn't look.
Godzilla uses the formula and idea of monster as metaphor and builds an impressive film around it. Then, just this year, Toho releases Godzilla -1, a period piece that takes place right before the original film and follows.
No, it doesn't. Why do these channels always get so many things wrong? Fucking idiots.
Godzilla -1, a period piece that takes place right before the original film.
So, okay, if it takes place right before the original film, how did they not know about Godzilla and then had to figure out what Godzilla was? Because they should have known what Godzilla was and what it was capable of. In fact, why would Serizawa be making the Oxygen Destroyer in secret and then have qualms about using it on a monster he's already seen destroy a building that was apparently, in what you're saying, was rebuilt between films just to get destroyed again? Wow, this is as bad as Dr. Skipper's video in terms of misinformation. That's crazy.
And follows a kamikaze pilot who failed to sacrifice himself during the war. After returning home from the conflict, he must find a way to live with the shame and disgrace he has brought upon himself. The film is a metaphor.
It's not that what he brought upon himself. It's more like what was expected of him societally and what he feel like. It is partially that, but not wholly that.
For the struggles that Japanese society went through during the fallout from the conclusion of the Second World War. It also features some of the most intense and exciting action sequences the franchise has ever seen. Both of these recent films have been fueled by authorial visions and genuine attempts at saying something through the metaphorical language of monster movies. But not all Toho Godzilla movies are like this. Many of the films aspired to do nothing more than to bash the cinematic equivalent of action figures together for 2 hours. And there's a beauty in that simplicity.
The American cut of Godzilla vs. Kong has such a detriment on the themes that the original was trying to make. Yes, I have seen both, and yes, the American cut is more action paced and has a faster pace to it. So if you just want to watch the movie, I guess you can like not really absorb what's going on in that movie, just watch the American movie. But if you want to hear what's being said about that film and like the theme it is trying to convey, then watch the Japanese film. And there's that. Plus the fact that like that version of the film has not been in the US for years. The fact that the Criterion Collection has it as a special feature and not part of the case for King Kong versus Godzilla is also partly to blame for this. King Kong vs. Godzilla has a theme of industrialism. Not really industrialism, more like what television ratings and like in a way spectacle was doing to the Japanese like people, because like Honda felt that the idea of King Kong and Godzilla just fighting was a stupid idea, and like making it far more comedic and over the top to satirize like this idea of spectacle was the point of that film. And there's a lot of dialogue in the film to bring that to light. But in the American cut is more like the idea that, oh, Godzilla has come from a prehistoric age, and King Kong and Godzilla are natural enemies, and they're just supposed to fight to the death. And a lot of the nuance is lost in that American cut. Said themes, having them be present is not enough. That's true. Having them be present is not enough, but then that is where I believe it is important to look at dialogue in those cases to see whether or not that like what is being presented is effective. I think it's more effective in King Kong versus Godzilla than like other films where like you could say, for example, Raids Again is trying to like talk about the Cold War. I don't think it is per se. It could be interpreted that way, but based on like what characters say and how that is trying to be expressed in King Kong versus Godzilla, the Japanese cut, I would say that, yeah, it's not just action figures hitting each other. Although, I would have to read.
Movies are like this. Many of the
I would love to. I know that people have done interpretations about what Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah was trying to be about, but like from what I have read and what I can think of at the moment right now, it is like we wanted to bring back a monster that everyone remembered because of how bad Biollante did. So let's bring back King Ghidorah. So Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah.
The films aspired to do nothing more than to bash the cinematic equivalent of action figures together for 2 hours. And there's a beauty in that simplicity. But here's the delineating factor between the Godzilla projects that work and the Godzilla projects that don't. They have to know what they are. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, it knows what it is. It's dumb fun. Godzilla vs. Kong, it doesn't. It's a silly movie about a massive ape fighting a big lizard, but it wants to be taken seriously because close to $200 million were spent on it. The lizard.
Wait, I don't get the point being made here.
Versus Mechagodzilla, it knows what it is. It's dumb fun. Godzilla vs. Kong, it doesn't.
I think the whole thing is that Wingard was saying that he just wanted like to make the movie about the fight. Like he also knew it was dumb fun. So I don't get why he's saying, King Godzilla vs. Kong doesn't know what it's trying to be, what Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla did.
It's a silly movie about a massive ape fighting a big lizard, but it wants to be taken seriously because close to $200 million were spent on it. The fact that Godzilla 2014 is the best of the lot goes directly to this point. When asked about what he was looking to accomplish with this project, Edward said,
"The film has a deeper meaning beyond it's just a monster movie. It's about the fact we can't contain this stuff, we can't control it. Nature really controls us."
The rest of the American Godzilla movies don't aspire to anywhere close to this level of thought. And even,
I mean, you could say the same thing about Cottom being about environmentalism. And like I think Doherty's even had quotes saying that. So this feels like cherry picking, honestly. The same problems at Cottom can also be leveled at 2014. And I'm not as like big a fan as many for GvK. So it's like you're really just trying to criticize GvK, but you don't really talk about Kong Skull Island at all, which is like everyone's favorite, and then try to lump Cottom in there as well.
Even the 2014 film kind of falls apart.
Up, more ads. Up, play. Come on. I ain't gonna say it. Oh yeah, StreamYard. It's advertising what I'm using. Hooray! Oh, I get one ad. Cool.
Under its own weight after the midway point. The MonsterVerse is simultaneously too dumb and too serious.
One sec. Let me just
after
go
the
back.
this level of thought. And even the 2014 film kind of falls apart under its own weight after the midway point. The MonsterVerse is simultaneously too dumb and too serious.
Or maybe it's because that the film hasn't sold you on its serious bets, so you think it's dumb and therefore it is also too serious. I think that makes more sense. Not to mention the fact that, like, why does 2014 fall midway? It's probably because of the fact that the character that had built up the most emotional connection with the audience ended up dying, and we're following a less interesting character who is not as built up as the essentially the leading man and the character everyone thought they were going to follow from the trailers.
Plenty of the Showa-era Godzilla movies are dumb, but they're obviously aimed at kids. Just look at the difference between Godzilla -1, which has a distinct point of view, and the next installment in the MonsterVerse, Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. One of them is a somber portrait of grief and survival, the other appears to be about Godzilla with glowing pink spines, and King Kong with a golden robot hand. If that doesn't say it all, what does?
Is that a mini Kong?
No, let's just go all the way to the... Nope, too far. I went too far.
Aimed at kids. Just look at the difference between Godzilla movies are dumb, but they're obviously aimed at kids. Serious. Plenty of the Showa-era Godzilla movies are dumb.
Everyone always uses Megalon, but it's weird that they'll never be like, oh, the Heisei movies don't have anything to say, but they're not. Just like, it feels like it's always like Megalon is always the lowest hanging fruit, and it's stupid, but that's what happens when you deal with people who do not really care about this and are trying to bounce in on the hype.
But they're obviously aimed at kids.
So if they're obviously aimed at kids, then probably the MonsterVerse is aimed at kids. So therefore, the excuse that those movies, that the show movies can be dumb, so can the MonsterVerse. That's such a bad point. It's so bad if you're trying to say the MonsterVerse is bad, because if you're also saying that the show movies were aimed at kids, someone could also just say that the MonsterVerse is aimed at kids. Therefore, they're fine.
Just look at the difference between Godzilla -1, which has a distinct point of view, and the next installment in the MonsterVerse, Godzilla Kong: The New Empire.
Probably because -1 wasn't aimed at kids, so therefore the point you're making falls apart after like just going back at and looking at it.
One of them is a somber portrait of grief and survival, the other appears to be about Godzilla with glowing pink spines, and King Kong with a golden robot hand. If that doesn't say it all, what does?
Is that a mini Kong?
Legendary has no faith in its audience. They have no desire to attempt anything other than to make money.
Or probably, yeah, and that's why they're appealing to children.
The reason Godzilla 2014 was so emotionally grounded is because Legendary hired a real auteur in Gareth Edwards, and for the most part, they allowed him the space to work because they knew that Americans needed the proper way in to Godzilla. That's what the MonsterVerse needs. The franchise needs to take a look at where things are and then start hiring auteur filmmakers to make stories that are focused on characters or concepts that are deeply compelling. Find creators who can make the world of Godzilla personal to them. Tell stories that are about what it means to be human, and then use the monsters as the metaphorical representation of those traumas. Make narratives that ask questions deeper than what happens when a big thing explodes. That's how you'll take a few jumbled up films that are considered a franchise because Warner Brothers and Legendary says they're connected in the marketing, and build an actual, living, breathing world that people will actually want to spend time, and most importantly, money in. However, there's only one surefire way to guarantee box office returns. Good, old-fashioned stories, told well, will always win in the end.
I don't really disagree. I might have to do this video another time, but I don't disagree with what he's saying, and Black had a question kind of relating to this. So what I am going to do is I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to put his thing on screen if I can find it. Crap. Yeah, but then we have that's nope, not too far. People just like to watch monster movies. What do you think the psychological reason for this is? I just have a base level understanding of it. Was wondering what your thoughts would be. So I think that oftentimes when you're making movies like monster movies, they're usually going to be more horrific because you're trying to exercise a certain type of metaphor for something else. I'd say that's like the easiest way to make a monster movie compelling, by making the monster beat something. And that's often what you see in things like Invasion of the Body Snatchers for a more human level, or Godzilla for a larger example. Although you can have something surrounding the monster be the central theme. So Frankenstein, the monster itself, is sort of the representation of Dr. Frankenstein, but is mostly the actions of that character, and what he creates is driving the themes of that story rather than just the monster on its own. And then with Dracula, and with the Wolfman and the creature from the Black Lagoon, you have concepts of things outside of the natural world, or just like the civilized world, still kind of creeping at the edges of what we understand. And from there, we need to be wary of those things, but also like being able to combat them, but also understand them, because the main thing about capturing the creature in the later films is about like understanding it for science, and it's better in certain cases to leave well enough alone. And then with Dracula, you see the villagers that were around Dracula understood the danger he posed, and it's only when people who are insulated from these dangers go into these areas that they unleash these kinds of terrors, in both the cases of the Wolfman and Dracula. But that speaks to like concepts of Gothic fiction and sort of that traditional storytelling. And even looking at things like Lord of the Rings, or the things it's based on, or the things that it took inspiration from, like the Volsung Saga, and Beowulf, like those creatures also represented things, both Beowulf and well, not Beowulf, Grendel and the dragon from Beowulf, and then Fafnir from Volsung. That's the easiest way to describe it, is that when people like to watch monster movies because they like seeing like something metaphorically represented through the guise of a creature, but is also because of an escapist fantasy that you could have by confronting these fears and anxieties in a way that is more action-packed. Like, I think, although we like to take even the original Godzilla super serious, it's still being a monster movie that you can be entertained by is important, because it allows you to tackle these themes in a more digestible format. I think had you taken the similar characters from 54 but just put them in a movie that was devoid of a monster, it wouldn't work as much. And I think you would have to then naturally touch on topics in a way that cannot be as soft and accessible, because you are then just directly dealing with the thing you're trying to make an allegory or the theme of your story. That'd be what I would say into the case of that. Michael Dougherty is an auteur. Have I ever changed that? No, I mean, like, there's some YouTubers who aren't Godzilla fans who've done okay videos on that. There's others who I think some of them are making kind of good points, but are just like really just bad. The Batman is about a man learning to be a true hero, and Spider-Man 2 is just a bug man. How's poor fighting an octopus? Yeah, I mean, like, if you bring things down to the lowest common denominator, everything's always going to sound stupid. Makes about good stories is fine, but everything else beforehand sours out a fair bit. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I think. The point that he makes is good. It's just that everything else is soured or just straight up wrong. I think the message is only on surface level. Hello. I'm just looking for comments, and I think anything that's like be kind of good for this. Can Godzilla be considered as a kid's character? So is it really a bad thing? I think overall, Godzilla movies shouldn't be directed at kids. I think Godzilla movies should have a level of seriousness to them. And I think that if the character is taken seriously and done seriously and done compellingly, then a kid who likes the idea of a giant dinosaur is then going to be entranced by the movie itself. Like, this is coming from someone, I saw Godzilla -1 10 times, and there were a lot of kids in the screenings I saw. Some of them were scared by Godzilla and some weren't, but I think that like that I could have a kid just watch the scenes from that movie of just Godzilla and like it. So I think that you don't need to make a movie like, oh wow, look at this, kids, we gave you a new power for Kong to use, and Godzilla looks this cool way. Don't you think this is really appealing to the children's? There. More and more so, there exist kid versions of Godzilla already in the past and in recent years. Sure, but I don't think that necessarily like that Godzilla should be molded around being as accessible to children, because there's a lot of kids entertainment that is spawned from material for adults that kind of loses the point of the original story. Like there was that Jaws animated series that no one talks about. Conan had an animated kid show that's, I've seen some of it, it's okay, but it doesn't really capture the themes of what Conan is trying to tell. Like, you can make Lovecraft stories for kids, it's just they aren't going to be good, or like they aren't really going to capture what the point of that character, those characters are supposed to be about. Like, you can make anything for kids, but ultimately you will have to dilute it. Wasn't there a Rambo cartoon? Was there? Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to look that up now. Oh no. Izukimo. Yeah, compelling is subjective, but I think ultimately, if you look at it, you can go in and sort of explain why something can or cannot be compelling based on evidence shown. And I think when we say something is subjective, it almost comes across as a way that it's almost like illusory, and we can never find some metrics to like make it properly. Avatar, The Last Airbender is technically a kid show, but its respect for the audience maturity and its writing is more adult than some shows I've seen. Yes, that is very true. Avatar is a really good example of this because it respects the audience in the fact that it can let them explore darker themes without trying to necessarily sugarcoat them in a way where like there's a lot of euphemisms used. We see things happen in a way that feels natural, and because of that, a child is able to understand them in a way that is applicable to the future as they grow up. The episodes with Jet are really good about this. Explaining what happened to the airbenders is another good example of this. Dealing with Zuko's trauma. All these things are like done in a way where they aren't like uber serious or like extremely gruesome. Like, we know what happened to Zuko and how he got the scars he did, but we don't see like his torture dragged out or like him being humiliated and like extremely demeaned in ways that's like not appropriate for a child. But we are still able to appreciate not only the fact that like where he's grown as a character, but understanding why he acts the way he does. Probably not this time. Only because it's literally past 12 for me, so I'm probably gonna go to bed after the stream ends. But there'll be another stream on the 19th for you guys, just to let you all know. Just curious, what's your favorite size range of kaiju? Show 50 meters or Hayes 100 meters range, stuff like that. Just curious. So, if you're wondering, most of the kaiju that I work on myself personally are all in the manlet show range. So you're talking like Baragon, Gorosaurus heights. So like 35 meters, 25 meters are like kaiju I make. I make them a lot smaller because I like engaging with my human characters more. But I think it's a lot easier to have characters like actually have humans that work well with 50-meter kaiju versus like 100-meter kaiju. But I think 100 meters is kind of fine. It's just when you get past the 100 meters is where things get a little kind of wonk, if you ask me. The problem with the humans in Godzilla movies is that most of them are used to pad out the runtime. Only a handful actually try and succeed on making a good human cast. I think that like they don't necessarily try to pad out the runtime. I think that what is given to them isn't just not well written. Like I think that in certain cases probably that is true. Some of them were done in a way that was just padding runtime, but I think saying that is an overused term and kind of reductive. But that is just me. That is just me. And if anyone's asking, yes, who said that? It was Joe Schmo who said that. There was a Rambo cartoon, Rambo: The Force of Freedom. And yeah, if anyone has read the original book, First Blood, or seen like the first film, or even some of the other ones which are even more gory, yeah, a Rambo show for kids is just not a good idea. But like, I think there's a lot of kids who probably find Rambo cool as an action hero. Same things like Predator, or Alien. Like, you could probably make those for kids, but just it's not going to work out well. Do you think Avatar: Last Airbender movie is bad or worse than M. Night's Last Airbender? It'd probably be better because it's going to be more faithful, but I think it's still going to fall into the same problems that live action stuff has when it's trying to adapt animation. Actually, this is a good example here. Godzilla the series, I wouldn't say is too kid focused. There's a I won't say there's anything super deep about that show, but it treats its audience with respect, and it treats Godzilla with respect, and doesn't try to make him too childish or too kid appealing. And yeah, no, like, regardless of that version of Godzilla, which I have my issues with, Godzilla series does that well. Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of the Skull Island show. And oh yeah, but yeah, I think that what I was talking about is that, like, you can have something that is metaphorical and deep, but still be like an escapist fantasy, because you can still have heavy topics be discussed, but in a way that's more palatable to an audience member who's just trying to get away from it all. But I think there are certain topics that, given the time and place, even if they are more digestible in a media format, they just aren't appropriate for like when something's going on. I wanted to be done this summer. Tonda Blazer. I haven't finished Blazer, so I can't really comment on that, unfortunately. I'm sorry. But now you've only recently learned about the plots in Rambo. Let us go on to the next video, which should be the final video for the night, and then it's Omni's video here. And for context, guys, these are all the books that he has done. I have read Operation Red Dragon. I still need to do a review on it, but he did that years ago. I'm not sure if he's going to do a direct sequel to it. I think these are all interconnected with each other, but I have read Operation Red Dragon. I just haven't had the time or the funds, unfortunately, to buy his book on Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres, because he did a video on like Kaiju Punk, essentially using that to coin the term for like Kaiju media outside of like the movies as like a genre. I may do like a small stream on that in the future, not because I disagree with it totally. I just I have my thoughts on punk genres. Yes, you are right, and most of them are bad. Oh wait, people not here? No. Oh, okay. God, I hate that so much. So that's what it was weird. So I have to do the share screen, and then I have to share audio. This is why I have to switch over. You hear nothing. There's the streamception for you all. Oh, that's probably something I'll have to look at later. Okay, let's go back in time. We gotta go back in time.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll see you on got to bounce for the night, but see you on the 19th. Yes, you have a good one, my friend.
am the Omni viewer, and it seems like this is just the season for mainstream YouTubers to post bad faith video takes about Godzilla. as recently Dr. Skipper and Nerdstalgic have caused a lot of G fans to reassess their stance on gatekeeping.
Yes, gatekeeping, good. But yeah, no. It's not actually. I saw this video before I rewatched the Nerdstalgic video, and because he brought up Nerdstalgic was kind of the reason why I made this a double stream with those two.
I mean, if you haven't seen these things, well, first of all, the Dr. Skipper video is an endurance test, but like they've spawned so many different responses. People breaking down why their respective videos just don't understand the basic franchise. They're either making giant assumptions, saying things that are just blatantly false, or they're ignoring things. And I know some of you have been waiting for me to do a proper response rather than the little comedy video I did initially. And, you know, I've decided I do want to do a response, but it's not necessarily in the way you might think. Although I will get the stuff you're probably hoping to hear out of the way first. For starters, let us look at the primary argument that both of these videos put forward, which despite being of vastly different lengths, vastly different editing quality, and vastly different tones, somehow they still come to the same conclusion, which is that of the many films, like the nearly 40 films if you round up, in the Godzilla franchise that have spanned 7 decades, only 2 or 3 of them are apparently worth watching. And I say 2 or 3 because Dr. Skipper seems to have forgotten that Shin Godzilla exists, despite including footage from it in his video. And those 3 films, including Shin Godzilla, also include the original Gojira and Godzilla -1. So of the 3 films they consider worth watching, only one of them is older than 10 years. So this argument reeks as much of presentism as it does of just plain ignorance.
I agree with him on this because I remember there were other popular people talking about Shin Godzilla in a similar manner when that was new. So it just seemed like anytime a new Godzilla movie comes out and it's really good and it does capture a little bit of the normie fan base, that we do get video essays talking about, oh, look at this, Godzilla over here is doing really good. And then it usually comes at the expense of the Monsterverse, normally. At least that's just what I remember when Shin was out. I just can't think of any specific videos off the top of my head. But yeah, no, I agree with this.
Now, why only those 3? Well, because those are the movies that are about something, you see. They are apparently the only Godzilla movie.
Wait, I find it hilariously ironic. That's written weird. I find it hilariously ironic how the entire fandom hated 98 movie for not being a Godzilla, while at the same time being hypocritical for using the word symbolism world. That makes no sense.
Movies in the entire 70-year span that have any substance to them.
99 actually have symbolism. What's that symbolism then? So, since someone brought up Rich ripping into Shin, outside of the fact he just didn't like the film for other reasons, a lot of what he did was also just for the memes. So, and that's coming from just firsthand experience, talking to the guy and asking him. So anytime someone brings up Godzilla 5400 ripping into Shin, I always be like, yeah, no, I talked to him. It was literally just for the memes mostly.
Them at all. And the rest of those movies, especially the Monsterverse ones, apparently have no substance whatsoever and are just disposable, escapist entertainment for the unwashed masses. That's the undercurrent. How blatant they are in saying it, well, that varies, but it's still the sentiment.
Symbolism is French, so surrender. That's what the symbolism of France is, surrender.
That's being put forward. That the only 3 Godzilla movies that are worth watching are the ones that are about something, and it's only those 3. Now, obviously, more than only 3 Godzilla movies have messages to them. When I did the How Political is Godzilla video, I estimated that roughly a quarter of the overall filmography has a socio-political message to it. Not the same message, obviously. It varies from film to film. But only a quarter of the movies, which leaves 3/4 that are more in the vein of entertainment just for entertainment's sake. It's true. But that's a quarter out of, like I said, almost 40 movies at this point. That's way more than just 3. Of course, the number also shrinks when you move from the movies to the greater franchise and you incorporate the games and the comics and the cartoons and whatnot, and you see that not all of those have messages either. Some of them still do, but the majority of them do not. Still, more than just 3, and quite a few of them are from the earlier days of the Showa period. So, like I said, patently false statement. But I actually think there's something else worth discussing here. Something that actually got on my nerves way more than the other inaccuracies. Well, the only other thing that kind of got on my nerves was how Dr. Skipper misrepresented the Lucky Dragon incident. But, you know, I feel like that's a subject for a completely different video on its own. There's something else, though. Something that I feel really needs addressing because it's something I keep seeing in the world of discussing cinema and art in general. And to be perfectly honest with you, I am sick of it.
Oh yeah, let me just do the ad. So I'll talk over the ad. I don't necessarily disagree with what he's saying. I think it's very true that a lot of people will glance over everything else that the Godzilla movies do, and specifically we'll just bring up 54 good. Maybe they'll talk about 84. 84 is almost always ignored, and like Shin -1, that's about it. Like, and then sometimes if they're a little bit more informed, you may get something about GMK. But yeah, no, I think that like the idea that a movie has to necessarily like say something. I think that a movie should say something, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like, this is super applicable to your life because X, Y reasons. I think that a film can just like have experiences in them. They're just really well constructed in a way, and you just get to enjoy them. I think like an example of this that isn't Godzilla related, and I'm not sure if anyone else like in the comments section has seen it, is True Romance. I wouldn't really say that there's a lot from that movie I would say is like applicable thematically for like me to take away from, but the scenarios in it make me think, and I like the construction of the film. The dialogue is really well constructed. How characters bounce off each other and how the acting is done are really well really well crafted. And I think that is why that film is good. It's not because of what the film is saying, it is because what the film is doing. That would be an example I could give where I don't think a film necessarily has to say something for it to be a good film. Oh,
Cap.
I am sorry. One sec.
So again, to recap,
I'm also gonna just not because like I want to get to this video quicker. Omni just talks kind of slow, so I'm just gonna up the speed a tiny bit.
The primary argument here is that 2 or 3 Godzilla
Cancer take
movies out of
why
7 decades are
Godzilla
the
not.
only ones worth watching because they have meaning, and the other movies, especially the ones made in America, have no meaning and are therefore disposable and not worth it and just cheap cash grabs and let's all throw rocks at them. That is the sentiment being put forward here. But what's the subtext? Well, it seems to me that what's being said here is that the only good art out there is art that has deeper substance, art that has something to say. It's basically a variation of the all media is political argument that people have been pushing over these last 10 years. And of course, if the only good art is art that has meaning, art that has a message, that means any art that has no meaning and doesn't have a message is therefore not worthwhile. And I could not disagree with that idea any more than I already do. Let me put it this way. Suppose we take the argument at face value for a moment, that only Gojira, Shin Godzilla, and Godzilla -1 are worth watching because they have meaning, and the other stuff, particularly the Monsterverse, is just mindless escapism with no deeper meaning to it at all, that's just there to be flashy spectacle and entertainment for entertainment's sake. Just for a moment, let's assume that's true. Here's my question. So what? And that's not a reductive question. I actually am posing it seriously. So what? Why is that a bad thing? Why is escapism frowned upon? That's what I think is really at stake here. What we're seeing is that people are taking these movies and basically using them as a way to basically wage war on escapism, because they're diminishing the value of the stuff that might just be there for you to have fun while watching.
I think the point he's making is good. I just don't think that necessarily it applies as broadly as he thinks. I do think in certain cases people do have an issue with the idea of escapism, and if there is something that is escapist, there is an issue with it. I think, however, in the case of some of these people, or at least the problem I believe that a lot of these YouTubers, like these normal YouTubers, are talking about is the fact that like in a way it almost feels like, wow, we got something really good with Godzilla. Why can't we get something good with Godzilla all the time? And I think that because of that, that is the point. Like, that's me being as generous and as steel-manny as I can for some of these people. But I do agree that in a lot of cases, people do have an issue with escapism. One problem I do see, however, is that because of what Godzilla is as a character, like the intent behind the character, it is hard to make a film about Godzilla that, like, as us as fans, is like trying to make one on our own, or think about one where we don't try to inject a like thematic message that is similar to what Godzilla was at its inception. I know some people just like they don't care about that at all, and they just like having their own little world where Godzilla kind of does his own thing, fights other monsters that we make up, and they have fun, they share it. But even looking at like in the fan community, the Godzilla projects that like get seen more usually either have like a really good hook to them, like Man of the Suit, regardless of whether you think that's good or not, or something like Black Mass. Like a lot of people have really liked Black Mass, despite some people taking issue with that Godzilla's design, but people really have been liking that stuff. So yeah, that's what I guess that's what I would have to say about that. What's the matter about it? Oh, there's like a war going on in the comments. The original and the Godzilla movie. I call this double standards. I don't get where you're getting the Cheetah. I don't get where you're getting the double standards.
And I just cannot abide that. Look, don't get the wrong idea about me. I like movies that have deeper meaning. I have got many, many videos spread across the 10 years, 11 now actually, that I've been running this channel that attest to that. And I like picking meaning out of movies, even if that means I have to sort of put it together on my own and say, well, if you look at it sideways and squint, maybe it could be about this. You can see that for yourself. But the thing is, I also like escapism. Escapism, I actually think, is a vital part of entertainment, because that's a large part of why entertainment even exists. It exists so that people can get away from their daily lives, get away from the constant back and forth on news media, from the grind of their work days, from the troubles that they might be having, and they can just take any amount of time they want and either read a book, watch an episode of a TV show, watch a full movie, play a game, and just unwind, have fun.
I think this is true, and again, like Black is saying in the comments, escapism isn't the problem. I think the problem a lot of people have with the new Monster Wars movies is that their world building is not suited in a way to where it feels consistent, or it feels like the world is like alive in a convincing sense. So when you actually just kind of want to escape into the world and enjoy some of its product, it doesn't feel as good or satisfying as satisfying as you'd want it to be. Like again, not Godzilla related, I really like Halo, but like there's so much wrong with the world building of the Halo TV show that I can't really enjoy it because of issues X, Y, and Z with the writing and the world building. And therefore, because these things are bad, I can't really have that escapism, because then I'm like forced to think about the problems that are within the film. I think it's true that there's some people who just don't like escapism, but I think that we're missing the forest for the trees in this case here.
Fun doing it. Again, I ask, what exactly is wrong with that? Because the arguments that are being presented here...
Oh, I know it's C.S. Lewis quote you're talking about. I forget it entirely. I have to read more C.S. Lewis, honestly, too. I have a few of his apologetics, and I just haven't gotten around to reading them again.
Are essentially saying there is something wrong with it. That these movies that exist to be a fun time at the movies and not make you think about things, that those have no value at all and maybe shouldn't even exist. But that's just missing the beauty of entertainment itself. Yes, Entertainment can be a useful vehicle for conveying a point about something. I'm not saying otherwise, but it can also just be a way to just kick back and see something maybe you haven't seen before, or hear something you haven't heard before that isn't necessarily going to profoundly change your way of thinking, but it's interesting. Again, like 3/4 of the Godzilla movies that exist in total are devoted to this. And those, my friends, those are the reason Godzilla even has a 70-year legacy. Had it just been that original movie, well, it might still have been considered a good film in its own right, but would Godzilla necessarily be the icon that we know him as today?
This argument I've heard a lot. I don't necessarily agree with it because obviously we don't know what it would have happened. I think there's a lot you can do to stretch the idea of the original Godzilla's themes and spread it across the series. It's just that since we have the cycle between all the different eras where we go from serious nuclear allegory to more silly and then back to serious nuclear allegory, and it's essentially like the push forward, the reset, push forward, reset, push forward, reset, which really, there wasn't really the push forward reset until Final Wars with the Millennium Era. It was more like push forward a little bit, really silly, reset, and now we've just kind of stayed at more serious with Shin and -1, although we always forget about the anime movies, which he does bring them up here, and those films did have a bit to say, but yeah, they are, there's a lot of problems with the anime movies, despite some good coming from them.
That's doubtful. And if every one of those movies that came after that first movie was exactly the same as the first movie, dark and dour and trying to push meaning onto you, it wouldn't have lasted 7 decades because it would have fizzled out very quickly, because there would have been monotony to it. There wouldn't have been any variety. People wouldn't have kept going to those movies because they wouldn't have had fun going to them. And you know, Toho's not opposed to still making Godzilla content that has fun either. People keep putting all of the pressure on the MonsterVerse by saying, oh, Godzilla's turned pink and Kong's got a gauntlet now, and that's just clearly meant to be ridiculous Bayformers nonsense. Toho would never do something like that. Hey, what's this animated Godzilla versus Megalon short online? Well, we'll just pretend it doesn't exist because that completely destroys the point. And
the issue I have with this point right here is the fact that the tone established from Godzilla versus Giga and Rex stays with Godzilla versus Megalon. Like, there isn't this weird jump from ultra serious gemstone Godzilla to then him fighting with like power punches and then doing like a drop kick. It's the same reason why like I'm fine with the Suitmation stuff kind of being a little bit more silly, because you kind of have that more guys in suits duking it out, wrestling moves kind of vibe with Godzilla versus Hedorah, Godzilla versus Gigan, and definitely in the Jaguar stuff. So like those are tonally very consistent. The MonsterVerse has that tonal shift from serious to a little bit more silly when it had a very interesting tone that just didn't seem to be followed up on, and that's what a lot of people take issue with, because their escapism came from the tone that was established in 2014. And I think escapism doesn't necessarily mean escapism isn't universal. You can have escapism coming from a lot of like different aspects. I think that like people find escapism in something like Dead by Daylight, although the concept of Dead by Daylight is you playing as like either a survivor or a killer, and your goal is either escaping from someone trying to kill you or trying to kill people, but that is someone's escapism. And I think if unintentionally, I think Omni's being very good faith here, but I think he's unintentionally conflating escapism and making it too broad, which I think undermines the point he is making. And there's still a fight going on in the comments.
There you have it right there. Even Toho is still indulging in the escapism. And again, I don't see how that's a problem.
And Black to say right here, is a well-written movie, not entertaining. Yeah, I think that, yeah, you can have something that's escapist, but also have good writing. And I think that that's why we need to look at the writing rather than like escapism. And he will talk about King Kong too. And I think that that's a point I want to jump on when we get to it. So is it one ad?
But you know, there's something else missing from this particular conversation. Everyone's been focusing on Godzilla in all of this. But let's not forget that the next movie is not just a Godzilla film, it's also a King Kong film, which means it's carrying the legacy of King Kong as well. Let's think back to that original movie for a moment, that first 1933 film that introduced the world to the eighth wonder. Now, King Kong is considered one of the greatest movies of all time. Even the stuffiest, uptight film snobs who think that fantasy is for losers and people who don't understand what real art is will usually make an exception for King Kong. And most of the time, they will also say that the reason they're making that exception is for stuff like how innovative it was, both artistically and technologically. How there's the meta text of Marion C. Cooper inserting aspects of his life into the character of Carl Denham. How it takes all these different thematic elements from great art throughout the ages and brings them all together into one cohesive vision. Things like that, of course. But let us also not forget that original King Kong movie, the one that set the standard for giant monster movies, the one that revolutionized the film industry, the one that became the must-see movie of 1933, despite the fact that there was a depression going on and most people couldn't afford to go to the movies anyway, that was an escapist film. It is a work of escapism.
That is true. However, like Black said, and I will say here, that is true, but because the film was written well, that's why the escapist fantasy of King Kong works so well, and that is why the escapist fantasy of GxK does not work as well. And yeah, I think that you could have an escapist film focusing on Godzilla and like the MonsterVerse and stuff without it having super deep themes, or like have something over the top and still have deep themes. Like I like very much like the point he's making. I understand it. I just don't think it's as well. It's not meshing together as well as I think he makes it.
That's not to say it's got nothing beneath the surface, of course. There are still plenty of thematic elements, but the primary reason it exists is to just entertain. The themes are there if you want to look for them. They are just sort of waiting to be discovered, but they're not obtrusive. Most people, the first time they sit down to watch King Kong, they're not even looking for that stuff. They're just allowing themselves to be transported aboard the venture to this lost world that's unlike anything.
Iron Man started with realistic grounded tone, then gone to a point of having magic and aliens in Endgame. Why is it a problem when Godzilla does it when Godzilla has been doing this for decades? So, in this case, like, if you look at Civil War, comparing that to, like, what was going on in Iron Man 1, tonally, it's very similar. Even though, like, the humor is ramped up more in, like, the Avengers films, the gradual build-up to that still like makes sense, and there was still like an attempt in the earlier phases of Marvel to like not bastardize the emotional core. And I think the reason why people got sick of the Marvel humor is that that kind of bathos humor eventually came at the expense of the characters and like more serious moments, and that's why you see a lot of things in Phase 4 just not being as well received. Like, you can have Godzilla get magic, get aliens, and still have it be serious or like be more lighthearted. I think it's like it's a matter of how it's written, and like that's just a big issue I see. And like there's obviously issues with the writing too. Thank you F29 for that. Zimo's ID, that's like that is a writing, that is an error with the writing, for sure.
Else they've ever seen before, with creatures unlike anything they've ever seen before. And that's why it succeeded. That's why it endures. If you look at the original movie, you'll actually see it doesn't really have anything in the way of socio-political commentary that's contemporary to current events of that era. It doesn't say anything about the rise of fascism in Europe or the rise of socialism in Russia or the stock market crash that's got everybody in a financial bind. The closest thing we get to the mentioning of the Great Depression is that when we first see Anne Darrow, she is clearly destitute and starving and desperate enough to try stealing an apple. And that's it. People of the era certainly would have seen that and recognized her as someone who got hit hard by the crash and can't find work anymore. Of course, you could also just say maybe she's a vagrant or maybe she's down on her luck for some reason. Because again, the movie never mentions the crash. It never mentions the depression. If this was your only window into 1933, you would think that it was depicting a world where there was no depression at all. And that was the point.
Yeah, I think that's true too. And that's why in like the 05 version, you actually see a lot more of Depression era New York, because that needs to be conveyed more to the audience. Whereas in 33, it did not need to, because people understood that intrinsically. That could totally be a whole other can of worms in and of itself about like how much of a like consensus as like a people, like a group of people, to where you don't need to explain things as much as a writer, because like a general country of people or like a like group will understand something intrinsically versus another. That is something interesting you could pull from this, for sure.
Why people saw it. They went there to get away from the depression so they could just be transported somewhere else. The only reason that element is even there for Anne's character is to show why she jumps on board Carl Denham's crazy invitation to go halfway around the world and shoot a movie she knows nothing about. It's a motivation. She needs the work. But that is it. There's nothing else to be said about who's responsible for the destitute state that the city is in, or anything like that. Because there isn't any need for it. That's not what the movie is about. The movie is instead about this adventure.
And actually, an interesting thing too is that like the idea that oppression kind of does have more of an effect on the story of the 05 version compared to the 33 version, which, because like there's a whole thing you see about Denham and the producers and like him going off to make the film and then losing the film, and then that's like part of the motivation as to why he captures Kong. So like but like good writing allows for like the escapism that people can experience.
About the theme of Beauty and the Beast, which isn't really political in itself. That's what makes this movie a piece of great escapism. I repeat, King Kong is considered one of the greatest movies ever made, and its legacy is being carried by the new empire just as much as Godzilla's legacy is. So technically, there is a legacy of escapism that leads up to this movie. And I ask again, why is that a problem?
Is this another ad? Oh, I thought this was a Helldivers ad. I need to buy Helldivers, but no, it's Star Citizen. I have not played Star Citizen. If anyone has, let me know. I would love to play it. It looks good. And if with me building my PC, I will definitely need more. I would definitely need more things. Oh, nope.
And of course, on top of that is the idea that there has to be a choice. The way it's being presented is like the people saying this are saying you have to choose for your entertainment to either be meaningful or be spectacle. And one of those answers is right. You better pick the right one that I'm telling you to pick. When in fact, you don't need to pick. There is absolutely nothing preventing anyone from enjoying both kinds of entertainment at the same time. And in fact, I would encourage people to enjoy both at the same time. There is a place for art that has meaning, and there is a place for art that's just fun. And there's no reason why either one should be degraded. Well, let me put it this way. They both still have to be good. I will make that very clear. All this stuff I've been saying in defense of escapism is not meant to be an excuse for escapism to just do whatever it wants and not even try to be good. Obviously, there still has to be quality there, but that quality doesn't necessarily hinge on its ability to say something. Likewise, it is more than possible for a piece of media that does say something to suck. I'm looking at you, Godzilla Polygon Trilogy.
I think that like this is what he's saying is more applicable to Skipper's video than it is Nerds. What's it called? I saw the video, Black. I know what he was gonna say, but yeah, no, I think this is more applicable to Skipper's video because Skipper's point was sort of that Godzilla needs to say something serious, more or less, compared to Nerdstalgic's video, where it's like the directors normally have a vision and like there needs to be the monster fights need to have like thematic meaning to them like all the time. But yeah, no, like you can have both meaningfulness and escapism. Or you can just have something that is like just pure escapist fantasy. But again, it's the point is writing.
Clearly, we're saying quite a few things because you loved hearing yourself say it as much as you could, and nobody likes those movies, so quality is still required. But there is no reason that you cannot have both kinds of.
In your case, Primordial, just let them fight it out. If it lets them get it out of the system, I expect. I'm not sure who's fighting right now. Is it LSR and Evolved? Yeah, you guys keep fighting it out, but like, it ain't that serious. Like y'all just, it's not that big of a debate there between you two. Please.
Obviously, if you go all in with escapism and you never do anything that has meaning, you're probably going to miss some really profound ideas. You're going to miss opportunities to think. At the same time, if you engage only with stuff that has meaning all the time without any breaks, you're going to be miserable. You got to have both of them. And you can have both of them. That's the whole reason that Godzilla -1 and Godzilla Kong the New Empire exist at the same time. Because they can. Because there is nothing that's preventing them from it. And nothing preventing people from enjoying them both. For different reasons, sure, but still, they can both be enjoyed by the same people. You don't have to choose. You don't have to eschew one and embrace the other just because someone's telling you to. So that harkens back to that other video I made where I said I'm probably not going to be comparing the New Empire to -1 at all because it's clearly aiming for something totally different. It's trying to be a fun time at the movies. And that's how I'm going to approach it. If I have a fun time watching it and it's got some quality to it, then that's what's going to matter. If it has something profound to say somewhere mixed in, that's just a bonus at that point. If it's spectacle and it's hollow and it really doesn't land at any point, well, then we have a problem. But none of us have seen it yet, so we don't know what that's going to be like. The point is that just because something is escapist does not mean it is inferior. In fact, it might be just what the world needs. So that's where I ultimately land. all of this stuff that's been going around recently feels like it's trying to be a bunch of elitist snobbery that is degrading to escapism. And I just cannot abide by that.
Or should we put GxK on the same pedestal? Yeah, I think that I think that like I agree kind of with what he's saying. It's just I don't think it's applicable to GxK versus -1. Although I think he did another video where he was comparing the two. I'll probably do that for another video. But yeah, no, I think it primarily comes down to writing and less to do with like escapism. Overall, we need escapism. The world needs it. Yeah, no, the world definitely needs escapism. But like again, write escapism well. There doesn't need to be like you don't need to make a socio-political message about like what's going on in a current day. You just if you want to have fun, just write it well. We should be happy and celebrate that we're getting more Godzilla films with different tones. The whole Civil War is unnecessary. I think that like we shouldn't celebrate just because we're getting things. We should very much be particular about the quality we get. That is very important. That's just one thing to just keep in mind. Power scaling matters, but like I think power scaling matters in universe overall. Since we're talking about power scaling right now, I think it matters when you're looking at characters fighting against each other within their universe because that is part of the story. But like, who is going to win a fight between so and so and so and so different universes doesn't actually happen. That is just one thing that's important. I think that that's far great. That has far greater importance than other things. But like, some stuff. If I need some serious quality control, there's another video I'm gonna do this for another time, another solo stream that I'll do, and if people want to join for that one, they can. But yeah, I think it's the video is called like don't just let people enjoy things, and I'll probably give a spiel about that. But yeah, power scaling doesn't matter as much as writing because writing is the background of the power scaling. It's the reason it exists. Yeah, well, they're intertwined. Like if you write something very well, but then like your power scaling doesn't make sense, then that is also it is a writing issue. Power scaling is part of writing. Because if you're saying this person can punch and punch and this is how much power they can output, but then you see a character also say this character can take this much, but then something happens and there's an inconsistency there, that is a problem with power scaling and also writing. In my eyes, you can put escapism movies on the same pedestal as artistic movies by the quality of them. They're good and bad movies on both sides. Yeah, but I think it's still again reductive. But yeah, I think that's kind of really all. That's all I've really got. So it was fun looking at all of these again. Out of all the videos I saw, I'm just not super excited for New Empire. I'll still watch it. I'm just probably gonna see it once, buy it, and that's about it. And do a stream or so on it. Omni's video just wasn't that bad. Nerdstalgic video just had misinformation. It was just bad. It had some points, but again, I think that just do more. If you don't do Godzilla videos, just do more research or ask like people in the community, like, hey, can you do some research for me or just fact check this, please? I think a lot of fans would be more than happy to. If I stream this time, yeah, because it is 1 a.m. for me where I'm at right now, so I have work tomorrow, unfortunately. But the 19th is when the next Kaiju Writers Roundtable is, so stay tuned for that. So there you go. I hope you all have a good night, guys. If you have questions or want to join on for the stream on the 19th, you can for that. It's going to be a writer stream specifically on human characters. If you have a human character that you want us to talk about or your thoughts on human character writing, stay tuned for that. I hope you all have a good night. And yeah, if you are interested, if you want something to do, if you want an energy drink, like I said, I have my referral link that's in the description for Havoc Energy, plus my coupon code Kaiju2K. For 10% off any purchases you do. If you want to join the Discord, that is part of signing up for the Patreon. There are people in there who are not on the Patreon just because they are like personal friends who are on that I know or I've known for like a long time. But if you sign up for like the Patreon there, depending on what tiers you do, will depend on like what you will get in terms of the rewards. So there is that. But yeah, I don't mind it if you guys have spats and stuff. But like if it's gonna get a little nasty, like I'll shut it down. I think it's important that y'all have debates, shake it out, act like men, simple as. Even if you're a woman, like act with some kind of decency about it. We're all here because we love shit. So yeah, have your yelling matches and get it out of your system. That's the last thing I'll say on this. But there's no need to be petty about things. So there we go, guys. Y'all have a good night. And if you want to keep having debate stuff, you can go to another Discord server or something to keep this stuff out. But like I said, have debates, have it out with like hash it out, be men. Have a good one, guys.